we are live from Las Vegas, Nevada at the BetMGM Sportsbook. It's SportsGrid live from Las Vegas. Excited to be here with you. We're going to have action-packed hours. Warren Sharp will join us in just a few moments. But what we're going to do today is set the tone for what the matchups look like this week. Obviously, both defenses, highly ranked defense, an historic matchup in terms of competitive defenses, but we're going up against two MVP-worthy quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, a former MVP, Brock Purdy in the MVP race all season. How can they fare against these defenses? So we'll do every matchup that we can. San Francisco offense versus the Kansas City defense. The Kansas City offense versus the Niners defense. What do the special teams look like? How will that impact the game? Surely there'll be a key special teams play. The Niners working with an inexperienced kicker and the Chiefs working with one of the best in the entire world. So wanted to take a look at the stats, really, of these teams as we set it up before Warren comes on. And Patrick Mahomes, at age 28, will be the youngest quarterback in NFL history to start a fourth Super Bowl, beating Tom Brady by 2 years. So how did his offense fare this year? Well, 22 points a game, 15th in the league. Yards per game, 8th in the league. Yards per play, top 10. So a little bit more efficient than their overall scoring appeared to be. But third down conversions, they were 6th in the league. Fourth down conversions, about middle of the league. And red zone scoring, that's a big problem for the Chiefs this year, 19th. So in years past, they were certainly far more efficient in the red zone than they have been this season. And that's probably led to the downtick in scoring, and what the reason that people were looking at the Chiefs quizzically and wondering if they could be a real contender in 2023. But here they find themselves in the Super Bowl, just a couple of days away from the real action. That red zone scoring percentage at 52%. So let's take a look at the Chiefs' defensive side of the stats, too. We'll go team by team here to open it up. And obviously Sunday features one of the best defensive matchups in history. The Chiefs have allowed just 17.3 points per game. That was second in the league, only behind Baltimore. San Francisco, we'll get to their defense momentarily, 17.5 points per game. That was third in the league, so virtually no difference. But Chiefs defense, really the biggest storyline perhaps for their team this year, and how they're able to keep winning, how they're able to keep the Baltimore defense down, how they're able to stop the Bills in the fourth quarter, a fourth quarter in which the Bills ran 23 offensive plays and scored 0 points. On the road, 2 huge victories. The defense, a big part of it. Their opponents' points per game, just 16.8, second in the entire league. And in the second half, the Chiefs hold the best scoring defense in the entire league, which is a theme that you will hear me repeat over and over again this week. What does this second half look like? I expect a low-scoring second half due to these defenses and these defensive coordinators being able to match up even against elite offenses this season. Opponents' yards per game, top 10 for the Chiefs. Opponents' yards per play, top 5 for the Chiefs. Third down conversions, top 5 again. So they're able to get off the field, force punts, create situations where they've tipped the field position in their advantage, and their opponent's red zone scoring, again, top 10 in the league defensively for the Chiefs. So that's setting it up for the Chiefs. We'll get to special teams a little bit later, offensive defenses of the moment. So what we have right here for the 49ers offense, the explosive offense in this matchup, strange to say, but Purdy versus Mahomes. Purdy had the better offense this season. Purdy has an 808 winning percentage as a starter, has passed for 9.2 yards per attempt and compiled a 47 and 14 touchdown to interception ratio since he's been starting in the league, a 111.2 passer rating. All those are the best marks in the NFL, quarterbacks with a minimum of 20 starts. That includes the postseason. So their offense this year, 28.9 points per game, second in the league. Yards per game, first in the league, nearly 400 per game, 396.9. Yards per play, first in the league at 6.5. And third down conversion, again, nearly 49%, top 5 in the league. Fourth down conversion, 50-50 coin flip for them. That's middle of the league. But again, the Niners, a team that was advancing down the field very quickly. Fourth down conversions, they were not in too many desperate scenarios this year, losing just the 5 games. So red zone scoring, though, tops in the league. Nearly 69%. So the Niners, when they get down in the red zone, they're putting up touchdowns. So obviously they have a lot of weapons. We'll go over that with Warren in just a few moments. And now we go over to the 49ers defensive side of the ball. So opponents' points per game, top 5. Opponents' yards per game, top 10. Yards per play, top 10. The one area in which the Niners have not really been up to par defensively versus the other elite defenses is third down conversions. 42% were their opponents on third down. That's 27th in the league defensively. Are the Niners on third down. So even with that incredible linebacking duo of Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, they did struggle to get off the field on third down, and opponents red scoring 14th. So middle of the road there. And I think that is something that I'll certainly keep talking about. The second half numbers. Can the Niners really stop the run? And Isaiah Pacheco, I think, will be a massive part of this game. But Isaiah Pacheco is expected is going to become the first running back since Pro Football Hall of Famer Tony Dorsett in 1977 and 78 to start Super Bowls in each of his first 2 NFL seasons. I have to say expected to, because the game hasn't started yet, so Pacheco doesn't officially have the start, but he's expected to. The Chiefs selected Isaiah Pacheco 251st overall, 11 picks before Brock Purdy, 262nd, the last pick in the draft in the 7th round of the 22 NFL draft, which was, guess where that was? Right here. I wasn't here for the 7th round, but I certainly was here in Las Vegas for the 2022 NFL draft. So those 2 players, full circle. I mentioned them because they are such big parts of the offense. I think it'll be really fascinating to watch them play. They got drafted here, they come back full circle, and they are playing in the biggest game, certainly the biggest game of Brock Purdy's career, and Isaiah Pacheco trying to run it back to get the Chiefs a second Super Bowl victory. They're in their 4th Super Bowl in 5 seasons. So Warren Sharp will be with me for the rest of the hour when we come back after break, and he's going to do a really good job of breaking down what the tendencies of these teams are, what all of those stats that I just threw out, what do they mean? How is this actually going to apply to the game? I'm excited to have him here. And it's worth noting that the teams against the spread records this year, because we're at +2. We saw some +2.5s recently, but on the BetMGM Sportsbook, you go there right now, you're going to find Chiefs +2. Patrick Mahomes, still the underdog. What's his record as an underdog against the number in his career? That's 10-1-1 with 9 straight-up victories. In the postseason, as an underdog, Patrick Mahomes' record, 3-0 straight up. So that's rattling around in my head quite a bit. I've said I'm a Chiefs lean all week. It's a tough game, obviously, to handicap, but I'm a Chiefs lean at the moment, and those stats are a big reason why I'm backing them right now. So they're 9-7 in the regular season against the number, 3-0 in the playoffs. Niners 9-8 in the regular season against the number, and 0-2 in the playoffs against the number. They have not covered in each of those 2 games. So we'll see if they can cover this weekend on Super Bowl Sunday. So that number's still at 2, total still at 47.5. Chiefs at a +110 money line. When we come back, it's Warren Sharp breaking down all of the action. We're excited to be here live from Las Vegas at the BetMGM Sportsbook. SportsGrid back after this.
If you were going to say, yes, of course, the playoffs started and now the Chiefs are the best team in the league, fine. I think that's wrong, and I think it is going to be close to impossible for the Chiefs to now play for the 3rd week in a row, their best game of the season.
Travis Kelce has put back-to-back games together for the first time all season long, and he's the go-to.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Don't want any distractions. And Vinny, on the eve of these teams getting to Las Vegas, we got a distraction.
We know that there's some family issues, not only with his dad there, but his brother has had a lot of run-ins here that have not looked good for the quarterback. But again, he's a different guy. I think we've understood that.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he is the perfect sixth man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
They have played terrible football, and yet they always win. Have you noticed? Everyone keeps talking about how bad the Niners suck as they win every week. They win every game, even games they're down 24-7 and they still won.
Now we have the first excuse when the Niners lose on Sunday night. They practiced on a bad field at UNLV. They didn't get the proper conditions.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
Well, look at the Heisman Trophy.
The early line.
And what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
Newswire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterbacks,
Pharrell
backup quarterbacks.
Coast to Coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time decisions.
I have no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live.
Just
Prime time.
Yard for a grand slam.
The bottom of the fourth inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
That was
Late
good betting.
Night.
We waited for 1.5. We got paid.
We did.
Didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on
There's
it.
no taking weeks off in golf betting, ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Las Vegas. We are at the BetMGM Sportsbook at the MGM Grand Hotel. Welcoming in Warren Sharp. It's the Sharp Report on SportsGrid live from Las Vegas. Excited to have you here, Warren. Obviously, a huge event coming up.
I can't wait. Super Bowl seems like it's taking forever to get here, and yet there's so much to still discuss because these two teams are so evenly matched. It's going to come down to the thinnest of margins. That's where there are some advantages there to one team or another. I'm excited to break it down.
Yeah, so that was really what I wanted to spend a lot of time with you on today, simply because you and I talk every week during the regular season, and we're talking about teams' tendencies to what they can do offensively, what they can do defensively, and exactly how efficient they can be. So where I really wanted to start is the KC defense, the KC offense versus the San Francisco defense, because this isn't a typical Kansas City offense. They've become more concentrated, but they've done enough this postseason. And do you feel like it's possible that they turned a corner in some way, playing two different styles of games to get the playoff victories?
I do. This is a team that really has made some adjustments that I think are really going to benefit them for the Super Bowl. Number one, they're utilizing a lot more runs to the perimeter and moving Kelsey to the perimeter. And both of those things are going to be very important, especially as they kind of narrow their target tree down. They're only focusing on fewer receivers. They're really eliminating some of those guys that they tried to roll out there earlier in the year that didn't really have a lot of success. They're taking those targets and shifting them back to Travis Kelsey, back to Rashee Rice, back to Isaiah Pacheco, and then running the football more.
Right. So in that vein, we saw Isaiah Pacheco touch the ball 28 times against Baltimore. I have an expectation that he's a massive part of the game plan. Again, I've already talked about how I like his over on rushing attempts. So even though he's not racked up a ton of yardage, they stubbornly are still giving him the football. Do you expect more of the same as they go up against the San Francisco defense that has a lot of big names on it, but perhaps maybe not playing up to the name on the back of the jersey?
I do. And so the way that they need to utilize Isaiah Pacheco, and just offensively in general, they like to use a lot of two tight end sets. They use top 5 rates of multi-tight end sets. Very different from the 49ers that use second highest rate of two fullback sets, right. two running back sets. So the two tight end sets, that's what they actually need to be utilizing a little bit more to pass the ball out of. When they want to run the football, they need to spread the field with their 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers. That's going to give them a little bit more success running the football. But the way that they're going to get more rushing success is by running to the edges. San Francisco's defense is basically top 8, top 10 in all measurable metrics when you run the ball between the guards against them. But when you run the ball to the perimeter, they struggle tremendously. They drop down to near bottom 10 averages when you run the ball to the tackles or to the edges of the defense. And without Joe Thuney there at their guard, it's going to be even more vital to run the ball to the perimeter because they're going to have even less success run blocking guard to guard. And so one of the interesting elements is they had the fewest edge runs over their entire regular season. However, in the playoffs, because they would run a little bit more to the interior, guard to guard, the Chiefs would. But in the playoffs, they have actually started, they're now almost 50-50 on early downs at running to the edges as opposed to into the middle, which is great because they need to lean on those perimeter runs. I think they're going to have some success here. That to me is more important than the actual run type because they run a lot of inside zone. I'm just care about run to the perimeter, attack the 49ers at their weak point, run at Chase Young, run at these ends a little bit more because they aren't nearly as good defending the run as they are the pass.
So how about KC and their passing attack? We know it's more concentrated. We have Kelsey and obviously Rashee Rice having a tremendous rookie season. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Justin Watson used very sparingly in the pass game now. So I would say Travis Kelce aced the test last week against a tremendous linebacking core in Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen, but I think this test may actually ramp up a little bit going up against Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner. In fact, Fred Warner has allowed only a 61.9% passer rating as the nearest passing defender in coverage, the lowest among NFL linebackers according to Next Gen Stats. So Travis Kelce does have his work cut out for him.
He does, and this is where there's another edge to the Chiefs, however, in terms of how they've been utilizing Travis Kelce more recently. So during the season, if you look at a heat map and identify where are they targeting Travis Kelce on the football field, most of those targets are coming basically 6 to 7 yards down the field, right in the middle of the field, right over the middle. However, in the playoffs, they've been spreading those targets a lot more to the perimeter. And that's exactly what they're going to need to do a little bit more in this game because between the numbers, this linebacking core of the 49ers, you mentioned Dre Greenlaw, Fred Warner, elite. They rank number 1 in EPA, number 3 in success, and number 2 in yards per attempt when you try to target your tight ends between the numbers. But when you target your tight ends to the perimeter of the field, they drop all the way down to 19 in EPA, 22 in success, and 11th in yards per pass attempt. We've seen a number of tight ends have a lot of success against these guys. They really haven't gone up against a very good schedule of opposing tight ends, but Sam Laporta in their last game out, this guy was not at 100%. He was close, not quite at 100%, working with Jared Goff outdoors on the road, not the most elite time to be able to go against a team when you're playing Goff outdoors on the road. Laporta's still 9 of 13 for 97 yards. And when they played guys like TJ Hawkinson or Trey McBride, those guys both hit 11 of 12 receptions. One hit 86 yards, another hit 107 yards. So they have been giving up receptions and yardage to good tight ends that they've been going up against. Now they're going up against Travis Kelce, who maybe has lost a half a step. Obviously, he's getting a little bit older, but still has Patrick Mahomes, and the chemistry for those two guys has gotten better. They've got this tremendous chemistry, and you need to attack the 49ers defense from tight ends to the perimeter. They've been doing that more in the playoffs, and I think that's one of the routes to success, because if you ask me what's one of the biggest things that the 49ers defense has to do to help win this game, limit Travis Kelce.
Right.
So the Chiefs must not fall into the trap of trying to get him one-on-one on matchups over the middle of the field.
So this is why we have Warren on. You can see we're starting to build a sort of game plan here of what the Chiefs need to do. Isaiah Pacheco needs to get to the outside a little bit more. Travis Kelce needs to get to the outside a little bit more. How about maybe that tertiary target in Rashee Rice? This Niners defensive backfield is a little bit, I wouldn't say it's much maligned, but it's certainly taking some criticism. They lost a key cog in Tafanga earlier this year, but you have Ambry Thomas, who's gotten hit for some major penalties. Lenoir out there. I just don't know. Now, this isn't Amon-Ra St. Brown. This isn't an elite receiving core. It's an elite pass-catching core if you include Travis Kelce, but how does Rashee Rice fare against this Niners secondary?
Look, the key to me is going to be on those third down passes, because I think they're going to probably end up running a little bit on early downs because although Andy Reid loves to throw the football, this is a weakness of the 49ers defense, attack them on the ground. However, look at the drop-off. It's measurable without Hufanga in there on third down especially. This pass defense of the San Francisco 49ers, weeks 1 to 10 when Hufanga was there, their safety, number 15 in EPA per attempt, number 10 in success rate. Both of those metrics since week 10 have fallen to number 31 in the NFL. Second worst third down defense down the stretch without Hufanga in there. And that's exactly where the Kansas City Chiefs are going to have to thrive, is convert those third downs when they get into them, keep the drives alive, keep getting closer to the end zone, because this is a team in the Kansas City Chiefs that is terrible throwing the ball over the top. They're not going to have very many explosive passes down the field, even without Hufanga there. It's just not who they are this season. ADOT very low, target depth very low. They have to matriculate the ball closer to the end zone to have some success. Converting on third downs is going to be very important, and this 49ers defense has fallen off tremendously. It has not just been the last 2 weeks. People look at the playoff games, they're so terrible in the playoff games. What has happened to them? It actually started 2 months earlier than that.
The Ravens game was evidence of that as well, right? They got smashed in that game, and that was a home contest as well. So you can see how we're building this, what the Chiefs would need to do. Well, we'll do the same for the Niners on the other side of this segment. But great stuff there from Warren on this Sharp Report live from Las Vegas, Nevada. It's SportsGrid live from Las Vegas. We'll be back right after this. It's the Niners offense against the Chiefs defense.
Super Bowl is set in Vegas. We get a rematch from just a few years ago.
The only consistency in the playoffs has been Travis Kelce.
Brock Purdy, back-to-back weeks throwing one touchdown pass, right? You can't win MVP with one touchdown pass.
I hate the Chiefs, but I bet on them.
This is going to be a game that is played inside a field goal now from a spread perspective.
All that matters is there's one game left, the big game.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
If he doesn't run well, the Chiefs are really in trouble. If McCaffrey doesn't run well, there's a lot more options that you can actually use at that point. And that's how I'm trying to approach it and effectively. But also, Pacheco anytime touchdown, if they're going to score a touchdown, probably going to be him.
That's a good look. Attempts from Pacheco if you believe Kansas City's going to play their style. If you don't, then maybe you go under that total in regards to that.
Pro Football Today. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. They reel off the Chiefs, do 21 straight points. They win the game 31-20.
I've been selling this, because of the $23 billion is going to be bet on this game in the States this Sunday. That's insane. And this place, Vegas, they're going to make billions of dollars if the Chiefs don't win.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
That's been to a sporting event. The atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
We are back live from Las Vegas, Nevada, the BetMGM Sportsbook and SportsGrid Live, and we have the Sharp Report here. Mike Blewitt with Warren Sharp. Excited to dive a little bit deeper into this game and these matchups, these key matchups. Just one game, so we have ample time to break down what do these offenses look like against these defenses. So it is rare that the calling card of the Kansas City Chiefs is their defense, but top 3 defense this year. They're great in a number of categories, top 5, top 10 in just about every major statistical defensive category. But you have a very explosive offense in San Francisco, a team that is scary because of the Shanahan scheme, but his ability to have so much talent utilized in a variety of different ways. But I think what we're seeing with both of these offenses, they really feel like they need to play from in front. So what do we see with the Niners? How do they get out in front? What is the key for them?
Well, they're going to have to be aggressive early, and I don't think a lot of people know about how deep this team passes the football down the field when they do pass. So they're the number 2 most run-heavy team on early downs. However, they also are the number 1 deepest passing team when they choose to pass. So it's a lot of runs. It sort of lulls you into this false sense of security that you got to play closer to line of scrimmage, that you're going to be okay, just try to figure out how to stop the run. And then they don't try to throw it short on early downs. They're trying to go over the top of your head as you've come up to try to stop the run. I love the strategy by Kyle Shanahan. It's one of the reasons that he's my favorite play designer in the NFL. I just love what his offense does. They use the highest rates of 2 running back sets. Usually it's Kyle Juszczyk, the fullback. And they lull you into that sense that you got to play with those heavier boxes. They are the number 1 most efficient rushing attack in the NFL, despite playing the number 1 highest rate of heavy boxes. And I went back and looked through True Media data all the way back to 2000. There's not a single other team since 2000 that has had as much success running the football against this many heavy boxes at the rate that the San Francisco 49ers have faced. So they've been outstanding. They haven't played a very difficult schedule of run defenses, but they've been outstanding. You can only play who is on your schedule.
Sure.
They've run the ball against these guys in a very creative manner. That is a weakness for the Kansas City Chiefs defense. It's against the run. Most of the people that I've talked to on Radio Row this week, the biggest thing that they feel the most confident about in this game is that Christian McCaffrey's going to have a good game. Everybody's like, well, yeah, of course, Christian McCaffrey's going to have a good game. Best running offense in the NFL going up against a run defense that really struggles. I have looked into some things, and I have found that while the Kansas City Chiefs have struggled defending the run, they actually have played really good, like top 15, above average against elite rushing attacks. They've played 8 top 10 run offenses, and they have got stats against those guys that would rank 13th to 14th in the NFL from a run defense perspective. We also know that Christian McCaffrey, these guys are going to run a lot out of 21 personnel. And the Kansas City Chiefs have been very bad defending 2 running back sets. Those running backs have had a lot of success, but where those running backs have had the most success is on interior runs, like inside zone type runs or fullback lead runs up the gut. That is where the Kansas City Chiefs have been bad. Kansas City Chiefs actually are almost a fringe top 10 run defense, about like 10 to 12, when teams run outside zone from 21 personnel. That is the calling card, the staple. It's what the San Francisco 49ers with McCaffrey do more than anything. They run outside zone to the perimeter. The Kansas City Chiefs actually haven't been total garbage against that. So I think there's a world in this game where we need to start thinking, and this is how I've been betting some props, we need to start accepting that there could be an alternate reality here where McCaffrey has a fine game, an okay game, but not an elite game. He's not 100 out of 100 in this game. Maybe he's 79 out of 100. Still pretty good, still capable of moving the football, but it'll take a little bit longer. They have to be perfect in more areas to move the ball down the field. And in that world, I think it gives Kansas City a little bit more of an advantage than some people think.
Plus, we are balancing all of that, Warren, with the notion that we just discussed that Isaiah Pacheco could see a lot of touches as well. Kansas City, I've used this stat a number of times, against Buffalo, they were able to win on the road, possessing the ball only 23 minutes. Mahomes only throwing the ball 23 times. Extremely efficient, able to score quickly. But against Baltimore, they flipped the script. Now that Kansas City had the ball for 37 minutes, and they kept Lamar and that rushing attack, which was obviously underutilized, off the field. So you have to consider that against this Niners team, they'd be better served, if they can, to keep McCaffrey on the sidelines as much as possible.
Yeah, and then if you look at the passing attack, one of the things that I have noticed about Brock Purdy, and I studied the games where they have played top 10 pass defenses, and certainly there's very few defensive coordinators that I respect more than Steve Spagnuolo.
Right.
Spags obviously devised the game plan to limit Tom Brady from having a perfect season in 2007 when he's the DC for the New York Giants. They're going to come up with a plan here to help figure out what to do with Christian McCaffrey on the ground and try to force the ball more into Brock Purdy's hands. Brock Purdy has played only 4 games against top 10 pass defenses. That is there's only been 2 teams that have played fewer top 10 pass defenses than have the San Francisco 49ers. Brock Purdy has just 141 pass attempts against top 10 pass defenses. Only 4 teams have played have had fewer pass attempts than 141 against top 10 pass defenses. So they really have not been tested against an elite pass defense, which the Kansas City Chiefs have. Kansas City Chiefs have been trending a lot better down the stretch defensively as well, especially against some of those deeper passes that San Francisco likes to throw on early downs. I've mentioned before how San Francisco throws deep on early downs at the highest rate in the league. Since the last 2 months basically of the season, the playoffs and the last month of the regular season, Kansas City Chiefs defense ranks number 1 defending early down deep passes. So that's a strength on strength matchup. It's not a strength on weakness. Purdy in those 4 games against those top 10 pass defenses, he ranks 28th in completion rate at only 59%. He's thrown 5 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. He's got a 6.1% interception rate. That ranks 31st in the NFL. The touchdown interception rate, that ranks 31st in the NFL. So we aren't seeing, and they're 1-3 in those games as a result of some of the passing struggles. Now, you could caveat it even more and say, oh, well, he didn't have his left tackle in some of those games, and one of the games was in the rain. Fine, it's a small sample size because they haven't played very many good pass defenses.
Right.
Now they'll get one. They will have Trent Williams there. It won't be in the rain, so let's see how they do. But the bottom line is, the point is, it's not like they've had a ton of success against those top 5 pass defenses, and they haven't very, very frequently played them. So this will be a new challenge for them to try to overcome with Brock Purdy. So if I'm Spags, I'm trying to make the game fall onto Brock Purdy's shoulders, make Kyle Shanahan feel like we need to press some things here because Christian McCaffrey's not having as easy of a path as usual. Let's figure out other ways to force the ball down the field, and you could get a pick or 2 from Brock Purdy.
Because we're aligned in some of the things that you just said, when you're talking about the long shots for Super Bowl MVP or talking about individual player props, one player that the second I just started looking at the matchups that I don't really love is Brandon Ayuk. Now, he can always have the possibility of hitting a big play. He's a big play wide receiver, but last week against the Lions, the big play was maybe the luckiest bounce in the history of an NFC Championship game off the face of a Lions defender. So I think Ayuk could struggle against Snead and McDuffie and this defensive backfield, which is elite for Kansas City. But how about some other options? We know they'll do everything they can to stop McCaffrey, but there's probably only so much they can do. Ayuk, I think, will have a tough matchup. Then you start to talk about the other targets. Deebo Samuel. He's somebody that you can use in a variety of different ways. Multiple ways he's going to line up, multiple ways you can utilize him, running, catching, perhaps passing the ball. So expectations for Deebo specifically against this Kansas City defense. He's a tough guy to stop for them.
Yeah, so I think every single game, Super Bowl especially, you got to paint a storyline of the way that you think that this game's going to go. And my storyline, my thesis, is that there's a chance that Christian McCaffrey doesn't have that 100 out of 100 type game. As a result, I think there will be the need or the feeling for Kyle Shanahan that he has to press other buttons here. He can't just continue jabbing with Christian McCaffrey the whole game and not having enough success. So I think they are going to utilize Deebo Samuel in the ground game a little bit more than we otherwise would expect. They proved last week that they didn't really have confidence in putting the ball into the belly of Elijah Mitchell until the very end of the game when Christian McCaffrey fell on his head on the sideline. That's the only time that they even got him. His first carry was with 3 minutes and 3 seconds left in the entire game. Other than that,
only because CMC couldn't be out there.
Because he couldn't be out there. 100% of the other carries were CMC at running back or occasional carries by Deebo Samuel. I think Kyle's going to try to figure out ways to get the ball into Deebo Samuel's hands early and often. Sometimes it's going to be through the air. Sometimes it's going to be through the ground. So I think Deebo's rushing yards, I'd prefer that over attempts. I'd prefer the rushing yards, but I think Deebo Samuel rushing yards over is an interesting look. But I also think I'm in agreement with you that Brandon Ayuk with that coverage, there's a chance he has a nice long one.
Yeah,
there's a chance he has
always.
a long one. But I'm more so down on him going over the 4.5 receptions. I think slightly fewer receptions. I think they are going to have to target other guys, and Debo is one of those guys. You could just get the ball into his hands all over the field. They're close to the line of scrimmage completions for Brock Purdy oftentimes, where it's an easier completion, something like a security blanket, and then let Samuel cook after the catch. And
Yeah, I
something
totally
he's
agree.
excellent.
And as much respect as I have for Nick Bolton, Debo's a handful. In the middle of the field, he is the type of player that can run away from anyone. You obviously have Chris Jones and George Karlaftis up front. You have Nick Bolton in the middle, and those defensive backs that we talked about that have really developed unbelievably well for them. Just incredible draft picks. McDuffie, a former first-rounder as well. So that gives you some sense of the breakdown. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about these coaches that we mentioned a number of times: Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan, Steve Spagnuolo, Steve Wilkes. What does that matchup look like? The brain trust of each team. Kyle Shanahan and Andy Reid have been in this position a number of different times now as offensive coordinators and head coaches, including against one another. So we'll do that when we come back. We'll also talk a little bit about some of the NFL coaching changes. Warren and I like to discuss that from time to time as well. What does this look like? What do these teams start to how are these teams going to be molded in the face of these new head coaches, Mike McDonald, Dan Quinn, and the like? So we'll come back live from Las Vegas. It's SportsGrid Live.
Tyreek, the first meeting, still had 5 catches. And Amon-Ra St. Brown still went through his number receptions-wise as well. Ayuk is now checking into a bit of the do category here.
We're talking about a field goal or less. The last time we saw a number greater than 5 was way back in February of 2008. It was that Super Bowl between the Steelers and the Cardinals, Super Bowl 43.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he is the perfect 6th man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Don't want any distractions. And Vinny, on the eve of these teams getting to Las Vegas, we got a distraction.
We know that there's some family issues, not only with his dad there, but his brother has had a lot of run-ins here that have not looked good for the quarterback. But again, he's a different guy. I think we've understood that.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
They have played terrible football, and yet they always win. Have you noticed? Everyone keeps talking about how bad the Niners suck as they win every week. They win every game, even games they should have. They're down 24-7, and they still won.
Now we have the first excuse. When the Niners lose on Sunday night, they practiced on a bad field at UNLV. They didn't get the proper conditions.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network.
We'll look at the Heisman Trophy
The early
race
line.
and what it all means. Individual success.
You should have tried to get something for Anthony Rendon. Not bought at the deadline.
Newswire.
We're getting a lot of news, trades, cuts, and some movement in terms of starting quarterback,
Pharrell
backup quarterback.
Coast to Coast.
I want to watch great players make buckets and win games.
Game time
I have
decisions.
no idea what the heck the Blazers are doing and what they
In-game live.
Just
Prime
took 'em
time.
yard for a grand slam.
The bottom of the 4th inning in a 12-2 baseball game. We got football scores going on at Wrigley right now.
Sports Rage
That was
Late
good betting.
Night.
We waited for a 1.5. We got paid.
We did.
Patient, didn't like the 2.5. Jumped on
There's
it.
no taking weeks off in golf betting, ever. These are the best weeks to bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid Live from Las Vegas. It's the Sharp Report here on SportsGrid Live as we sit here at the MGM Grand and the BetMGM Sportsbook. So, Warren, we've had a chance to break down offense versus defense, who might have the edges, different ways that they can attack one another. Well, part of that, as much as we like to game plan, there's guys that get paid to do that for a living that are game planning against one another and have done this exact thing 4 years ago in the Super Bowl. So, Andy Reid versus Kyle Shanahan, Steve Spagnuolo and Steve Wilks, the defensive coordinators. Offensive coordinator in this game, not as big a position because those head coaches themselves effectively the offensive coordinators and game callers and game planners. So, I'll say this. I'll just lead you into this. I have some concerns about Kyle Shanahan, not because he's not a brilliant play caller, but we have seen him make some quizzical decisions when he was the offensive coordinator with the Falcons, when he chose to pass the ball with a huge lead and it led to some inefficiencies. 4 years ago, they had a 10-point lead, and with 8 minutes to go, Jimmy Garoppolo ended up melting down, and people questioned whether or not he should have been throwing so much. So, my first question is, do you have concerns about Kyle Shanahan in this spot?
I mean, Andy Reid's not perfect either. Let's just say that. So it's very difficult to be perfect in this spot. It's why I believe coaches in the offseason need to undergo some of the stress tests and training that some of the guys in the military get put forth. Some of the guys making the key decisions in the military, some of that level of training.
Yeah.
Because you have to make decisions under pressure, and you have split seconds to make those decisions because you have to get the right personnel in, and then you have to get the right play call in, and you don't have very much time. And it's on such a big stage, and the stakes are so high. Bad play, boom, you might be punting the ball, turn over the ball. You could play, you could be winning the Super Bowl. So is so much pressure on these coaches, especially because they, like you said, they are the head coaches, so they're in charge of everything, plus they also are calling all of the plays. So it's very, very difficult for both of these guys. Not necessarily an enviable position that they're putting themselves into it. But the glory is theirs if they come out on top, right? And for since we have not seen Kyle Shanahan thrive in this spot, and we have seen him struggle, you have to give the edge to Andy Reid just by default. That said, I do think that a lot of people look at Kyle Shanahan and think, oh, he can't get it done. He can't. I think that's a bunch of bull. I think Kyle Shanahan is one of the best coaches that we have in the NFL, and I'm sort of leaning towards the Chiefs here, but if I wasn't on the Chiefs, I would be wanting the 49ers just because I want to just throw the narrative in the garbage that Kyle can't do it because he's one of the best coaches out there.
Which, by the way, that narrative existed for his counterpart in this Super Bowl, Andy Reid. He can't get it done. Look, that's a very common talking point in sports, and we're at Sports Talk, and it'd be nice to sit here and be like, he'll never get it done, or this guy can never win a Super Bowl. People say, I'm old enough to remember that people said that about Peyton Manning, that he'll never win a Super Bowl. He won 2. Or Alex Rodriguez. I'm a Yankees fan. Alex Rodriguez will never win a World Series until he helped carry the team to a World Series. So that hyperbolic stuff, I don't really buy into. I am with Warren in saying that I think Kyle Shanahan's a good coach, but those questions will follow him in terms of him being aggressive at the wrong time and conservative at the wrong time. They'll continue to follow him until he's able to lift the Lombardi Trophy. So now Spags, who we both have, I think, a lot of respect for, Spags in the second half of games has been lights out for years now. The Chiefs' second half unders and fourth quarter unders are huge winners all season long. And this Kansas City Chiefs team, in fact, I'll bring up the stats right now. So offensively, by the way, both teams top 6 in the league, 14.8 to 14.5, San Francisco to Kansas City respectively in first half points. But in second half, their defenses, they take those leads and then convert them into being able to slow the game down. Kansas City's opponents scoring less than a touchdown per game in the second half. Just 3 points was Baltimore able to score. San Francisco allowing 8.5 points per game in the second half. So these teams combined allow not even 16 points per game in the second half.
No, I mean, the biggest thing here to me is I just respect the defensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs in terms of he's been doing this since 2007, shut down Tom Brady's game plan for the New England Patriots in their undefeated season. Steve Spagnuolo is a mastermind here, and I think he may not have the same quality of players at some of the key positions. Like if you name off some of the top 5 players, most of those defensive top 5 might be on the San Francisco 49ers. But I think the way that he coaches his defense, the way he amasses the talent, and the way that, I mean, they've had losses. Like their worst game that they played, one of them was against the Green Bay Packers. A lot of people turn to that Green Bay Packers game and say, oh, they lost them. This Matt LaFleur, as a disciple of Kyle Shanahan, that might cause trouble for them in this game. They could follow the same game plan. In that game, they were without Nick Bolton. They lost their starting safety on the 7th play of the game. They lost a starting linebacker on the first snap of the second half of that game. They were playing most of that game with a ragtag group that they had to just assemble at the last second. They had no time to make adjustments or coach any of these guys up. Lost the spine of their defense just like that. I think that they're going to fare a lot better here, and I respect the way that Spags is going to make those adjustments quickly and just get on top of the things that Kyle Shanahan might be looking to do here. So, I love I'm a big coaches matter more than most people think.
Yeah.
And so I think that you might have turnovers that could decide the game. You might have a bunch of sacks potentially, although I don't think so. But if a quarterback takes a sack or 2, fumbles the football, that could decide the game. Otherwise, I think it's going to come down to the game plan and the coaching. Because I think both of these, all these players, they're generally really good with execution in general. I think it's the strategies that could end up deciding this one.
I tend to lean your way, and I think you and I are both leaning the Chiefs because, Spagnuolo is a big part of my thought process here. Their ability to lock teams down in the second half can't be ignored. And I know this is an elite offense, perhaps the most elite offense when all things are considered, but it doesn't mean that Steve Spagnuolo can't outwit them and figure out how to exploit some of the weaknesses on offense that the Niners may exhibit in the first half. So we've talked a little bit about coaches and the Super Bowl. We've gotten your thoughts. We'll do a little bit of special teams as well to wrap it up. But since we have a few minutes and we've had a lot of news regarding coaches in general and coaching changes, what team do you think going into it? And obviously teams are going to go through free agency in the draft as these new coaches build their franchises. What franchise do you like the hire that they made? Mike Macdonald to Seattle? Is it anybody else?
Look, Mike Macdonald I think was a fine hire. I really wasn't. I guess I was a little bit more surprised than anything with the general way that these coaches were being hired this year and who was being selected. There wasn't any sort of pairing that absolutely jumped off the map to me. I was very surprised that Ben Johnson didn't end up in D.C. I think more than anything because it seemed like the table was set, right, for that to occur. You had the opportunity for Ben Johnson to draft a quarterback pretty high in the draft with the Washington Commanders, and them to have a lot of very low expectations, build from the ground up, try to do something there. Obviously, he decided he didn't want to be either involved with his ownership group. There's a lot of different rumors that are circulating. So that one was a little bit surprising to me. There's also a couple of guys that got hired that, just didn't really impress me all that much. So I thought this general hiring cycle was interesting. I do think that Harbaugh with the Chargers is one that we just seen his early success wherever he has gone. He takes a team that has a low record, and that first year there's something measurable, and that second year then is an even bigger jump. We saw that just in all of his stops, whether it was college or the pros, and he went over his projected win total the first 3 years in his first stint in San Francisco. Took that team to conference championships 3 straight years, I believe, Super Bowl 1 year. So I think that I'm excited to see, because you could debate all you want about Herbert and if he's good or he's not good or how elite really is he. But we're going to find out now. You finally got a guy in there in Harbaugh who brings great assistance with him, brings great coaching with him. And I think the coaching that Herbert's going to receive, coupled with some of the smart decisions that they're going to make there, we're going to find out what his ceiling is pretty darn quickly here.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Harbaugh, now, does he wear people out? Yeah, he has in a couple of different spots, but he's won everywhere he's gone. I think what's curious about the Chargers is they're so far over the salary cap. you and I talked about it on draft night. Like, I'm not sure what they were doing. They didn't add anybody in free agency, and now they find themselves over the cap, another unsuccessful campaign. It feels like they might have to rip it all down to the studs for Harbaugh to build it back up with his new GM.
Yeah, and anytime you're paying a quarterback, which they will be with Justin Herbert, it becomes that much more difficult.
Of course.
And we've got the huge difference here with these two teams. In Brock Purdy's being paid at QB 67, it's much easier to build a roster when you're paying a quarterback on his rookie deal, especially Mr. Irrelevant. Meanwhile, Patrick Mahomes hits the salary cap at the highest number for any player in the league this season, and how difficult it is to build a roster around him.
Yeah, so a couple of other hires. You know, the Raiders right here in Vegas, they are in the exact same position that they were in 3 years ago, where they had an interim coach. This time they elect to keep Antonio Pierce. Last time they did not keep Rich Bisaccia when he replaced John Gruden. So I think the Raiders have a long way to go, but do you feel it was the right move to sort of read the room, listen to the room, and it feels like the players influenced this decision heavily?
Well, they did, but think about this. This is funny to me. What player is going to want to say, hey, bring in somebody that I'm not familiar with, who may or may not like me. Just bring in some new guy, and I'll have to work my ass off to impress him. Like, most players aren't going to say that.
Of course.
Most players want status quo. All the starters, they want status quo because they were starting. Now, are they going to win the Super Bowl with Antonio Pierce as their head coach? I highly doubt it. But do they think that they're going to be on the roster in a few years when a new coach comes in that might win the Super Bowl? You know, that's probably less likely. They're playing for a job. They're playing to keep that job, and Antonio Pierce was giving him that job. I generally am against hiring interim coaches, especially like this. I saw the philosophy that they were exhibiting offensively. You know, it was a great feel-good story. Just run the football a lot, and, you know, we're just going to run it. And I don't really buy into that being a winning recipe long-term, especially once other teams are starting to scheme and game plan against you and what you're trying to do. You know, it might have helped make some of their games a little bit lower variance, and from that respect, when they're underdogs, you want to try to shorten the game anyway, so I kind of get it from that regard, but it seems like this is just their game plan cookie cutter, going to be every single week. We just want to be a tough run-first football team, and, you know, when you don't have the creativity offensively like a Kyle Shanahan, who can run the football a lot, but runs it in such unique ways, and then also has such a creative passing attack off of that, like, you can't just be a run-first team without that. I think they're going to be lacking in that regard. So I generally don't buy. It feels the same as like signing Joe Flacco as a feel-good story to a big contract after he won the Super Bowl his rookie season with the Baltimore Ravens with the 50-year option. It's like, well, what else could we do here? We really don't have that many other options. Like, kind of feel like we're stuck with this. Sort of feels like how the Raiders are. They felt like they were sort of stuck with it. The players wanted it also. Fine, let's just make the easy move and just sign him.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's nothing against Antonio Pierce. He might be a fine coach, but philosophically, you're in the same division as the Kansas City Chiefs and Justin Herbert and Sean Payton now, and then you're going to have to step aside and have somebody offensively come in creatively and help you to score points against some of these teams, or score points with these other teams. On another day, we'll talk about Cliff Kingsbury and what happened, him leaving what we thought was going to be the Vegas job and going to Washington. But when we come back, we'll wrap it up with some special teams talk with Warren Sharp on the Sharp Report.
Super Bowl is set in Vegas. We get a rematch from just a few years ago.
The only consistency in the playoffs has been Travis Kelce.
Brock Purdy, back-to-back weeks throwing one touchdown pass, right? He can't win MVP with one touchdown pass. I hate the Chiefs, but I bet on them.
This is going to be a game that is played inside a field goal now from a spread perspective.
All that matters is there's one game left, the big game.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. They reel off, the Chiefs do, 21 straight points. They win the game 31-20.
I've been selling this, like, because of the $23 billion is going to be bet on this game in the States this Sunday. That's insane. And this place, Vegas, they're going to make billions of dollars if the Chiefs don't win.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Jordan Clarkson Jordan Clarkson is a walking bucket. He will shoot you in games. He will shoot you out of games. But he is the perfect sixth man for a team looking for bench production. A guy that can go get his own shot.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I'm digging deep, fellas. I'm digging deep. Christian McCaffrey minus 220. Donnie, how could you do that? The price point is way out of control in this. Keep it simple. The goal is to win money, not to outsmart everybody.
Mahomes is minus 140 to throw 2 touchdown passes. And if he's going to, every single thing suggests a wide receiver will haul in at least one, if not both.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
That's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game. I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Back to close it out with Warren Sharp and the Sharp Report here on SportsGrid live from Las Vegas. We want to talk about special teams. Special teams are a massive factor in a ton of playoff games. We saw it in Buffalo. Missed kicks, really a big storyline. So we got Harrison Butker, a very successful field goal kicker, going up against a rookie kicker in Jake Moody. But we also have the punting game to talk about.
Yeah, the punting game is where I want to start with here. We've got 2 punters, both punt at very different situations over the course of the season. You have the San Francisco 49ers. They punt down at sea level. This is the highest elevation for any Super Bowl that's been played in history up here in Las Vegas. I think these punts are going to be traveling a little bit further, and for that reason, I think San Francisco is going to have some success. We bet over longest punt for San Francisco. Also bet over the longest punt for Kansas City, because when you think about it, what Kansas City has been doing here, punting a brick when they played at home against the Miami Dolphins in the wild card round. That game saw record low almost wind chill temperatures. Then they go to Buffalo where it's freezing cold up there as well. They play in Baltimore in the rain. Now they're playing in a climate controlled situation environment that punting is very successful for them. They've had a lot of opportunities to kick deep punts in this venue because they play here once a year. And I think the same thing will transition into actually Harrison Butker for the Kansas City Chiefs from a field goal kicking perspective. The one drawback, the one concern, red flag that I have, Mike, about the offense of the Kansas City Chiefs is their tendency to stall out in the red zone, and thus I think we're going to see Harrison Butker maybe kick a field goal from in close, but he certainly can bang one out from deep as well. He's got a great leg. So for that reason, I think Harrison Butker over 1.5 field goals made in this game is another prop that's interesting.
Speaking my language, I love Harrison Butker overs. I think the Chiefs will take advantage early of a Butker kick. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 3-0 Chiefs in the first quarter. I have to be honest, I have concerns. Jake Moody's a rookie. He's been fine. He's been good for a rookie kicker, but he's a rookie. And it's the Super Bowl. So we obviously have a lot to discuss regarding special teams and more. It's been great to have Warren Sharp on for this hour. It's been the Sharp Report all hour. Got down with all the matchups. Great job by him as always. When I come back, I'll be with Brady Cannon live from the BetMGM Sportsbook in the MGM Grand Hotel. I'm Mike Blewitt. I'm back after this on the Grid.